was off February for you, and you were encouraging people to put away devices, stop scrolling, be more present in the moment and with the three-dimensional people. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Off February is the Off Movement's latest initiative, and it's based on a simple challenge, which consists in actually deleting your social media apps from your smartphone for 1 month. So this is a global challenge that we launched for the first time this year in 2026, but it's reached at least 50 countries, so we're quite happy with the reach it's had. And we're not telling people to stop being on social media completely. We're not telling them to delete their accounts. We just want to target the app because we believe that a lot of the sort of unintentional compulsive use of social media has to do with using the app and using smartphones, which have made hyper connected us and sort of filtered in every sort of facet of our lives, in public transport. Well, sometimes people drive and watch their smartphone as well, which is actually pretty dangerous. But in any queue in which anytime your brain actually is bored for more than 2 seconds, people have this tendency to grab their phone and just check their social media, or sometimes just check anything, and they end up scrolling for a long time. So Off February really puts the stress on all the time we spend scrolling at the expense of time that we could invest in other things that are all positively correlated to our well-being, whether it's anything that has to do with socializing, spending time with your kids, with your family, with your friends, without so much digital interference. Also anything that has to do with physical activity, sports, just walking around. Thirdly, reading, and I would say culture in general, sort of outdoor leisure, etc. And finally, sleeping and just resting. And these four things have been tremendously cannibalized by social media in the past 15 years, and we know now that they've had a huge costs for the society. And that's what we try to sort of address with this specific challenge, this Off February challenge, because we think it's a way to sort of offer a synchronized, selective sort of escape to this hyperconnection I've just described.
I think that that's such a great thing. Did you get feedback from people? Because I know that a lot of people, just the thought of deleting an app off their phone, because we spend so much time mindlessly scrolling, had to have very strong reactions from people one way. So what's been the feedback?
Well, to be honest, the reaction overall has been extraordinarily positive. I thought that some people would challenge us more, and even we've had a lot of sort of media interviews, which especially in some countries. So I've just spent my last month not really being off. I've been just quite active, and a lot of the journalists even that who interviewed us afterwards, they just thanked us for this initiative. And of course, for some people it's hard. For some others, for me, I can't really say that it's been very hard, because if you want to see my phone, I have it right here. That's my phone, so I can't delete apps because I have apps in the first place. And some people ask me whether it's my only phone, and I say no, I have another Nokia, sort of old style. So if anything, for me, it's been a challenge to be today. To join this Instagram live, because I don't have Instagram myself, and this is just we just installed the app just for this interview.
Wow. So I want to talk a little bit about, because I remember seeing probably about 2 years ago, there was an image that had circulated around social media that was basically comparing social media to multiple drugs. So it had like syringes technology and what it's doing to our bodies, our brains, and specifically our young people, our teens, and all those people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist myself, so I can speak in very general terms. I'm not a doctor either, but it's quite clear now that there's an abundance of evidence, of scientific evidence, that hyperconnection, I would say in general, of which social media is a great part of, is causing a lot of damage on our mental, but also on our physical health. We often focus on the mental health, but it's also affecting, it's making us more sedentary, it's affecting our sleep, it's affecting our vision. There's even evidence about the connection it has with sort of cardiovascular capacity, and so on. But if we speak more about mental health, first of all, there's been, as you probably know, a huge increase in mental health problems since roughly the beginning of the past decade of the 2010s. There's a year that's really sort of it's very striking how the year 2012, if you look at most graphs of mental health problems, for instance, or other sort of similar variables, they've really surged in all countries starting in 2012. And I think if you look at the different sort of hypotheses that try to analyze why, now we know that it's basically mostly social media, because in the beginning people said, well, maybe it's the aftermath of the 2008 economic crisis, but this really doesn't really square up in terms of geography, because then why would we see such similar trends in Greece and Wisconsin and Belgium and pretty much anywhere in which you have data? Because the economic crisis of 2008 was very different and had a very different social impact depending on the country. Then also some people speak about climate anxiety, but this came a little bit later. So anyway, my point is that most of the other potential explanations were sort of discarded, and we're left with this sort of like massive thing that hit pretty much all countries in a very simultaneous way, which are basically smartphones plus social media. 2012, was the year in which the smartphone penetration was reached 50% in a lot of developed countries. And by the way, this is not just a Western or just like a developed countries issue or rich countries issue. For example, Off February relies on a very vast network of partners, including, for example, an organization in Kenya. And they were telling me, and then I actually looked at the data, and they were like totally right, that Kenya is the country in the world in which kids receive their smartphone at the earliest age, and in which people spend the most time on social media. So we often think, well, in those countries, in those like very poor countries, they probably don't have these problems. They actually do. And if you look at actually the Western world or developed countries, unfortunately, there's a problem within the problem, which is that the lesser, the lower the education levels are, the more affected you are, or the lower the income is, the more affected you are by these problems. So it's a bit like food, maybe 100 years ago, people who didn't have enough resources, they ate fewer calories than rich people. And now, unfortunately, they actually eat more calories, and they're actually more affected by obesity, because it's actually like worse calories than people who have gone to university and have higher incomes. So we're seeing a bit the same trend, unfortunately, with digital technology. There's a huge inequality, and that we also have to address.
So what practical tips do you have for people watching that think about deleting social media apps and not being on and have anxiety about it? What can you tell people to help them bridge that gap?
Well, I mean, first of all, what we try to do, I'll just really answer like more specifically your question, but what we try, I think, in general to do at the Off Movement is provide collective solutions, because there's a lot you can do by yourself, but there's also lots of ways in which, unfortunately, it's very hard to act on your own as if you live like, in an isolated way, because this really affects us collectively. So I'll just give you 2 or 3 sort of examples about that. First of all, Off February is a sort of like synchronized way of selectively leaving social media at the same time, because then we know that all the FOMO, the social pressure, that is a mechanism that's just so used by social media, actually decreases, because that a lot of your friends are not going to be on social media during that month, etc. In general, at the personal level, I recommend that we set clear barriers, both time and space barriers, between those devices and ourselves. Very concretely, ensure that your phone doesn't remains in sort of like common parts of your home, doesn't go into the bedroom. I think that's a really key point. That just doesn't go into the children's bedroom, but ideally that it doesn't go into the parents' bedroom either. People tell me, the problem is I use my phone as an alarm plug. Well, then buy yourself an alarm plug, and last book, I speak of something called, which I call single-purpose objects. These are objects that seem like dumb objects, but that only can, serve one purpose, but at least don't collect our data, don't catch our attention, don't invite us to externalize, to outsource our cognitive efforts, inviting us to do things on behalf of us constantly, like calculating, remembering, orientating us, etc. So I think that's an important thing. And then speaking of kids specifically and minors, we have a huge body of evidence now that the younger they get a smartphone, the more their mental health is going to be affected. Every year that you wait before you actually give a smartphone to your kids, the better they're going to be. It's like probably the best present you're going to be able to give them, and it's free, or it's actually like less expensive than giving them a smartphone. So again, what's the problem? Well, a lot of parents say, well, I would like to, but if all the other kids at school have, or their like friend groups have a smartphone, it's too hard to resist social pressure. And so this is why there's organizations as in the US you have smartphone free childhood US. In Europe and in other countries, there's actually more and more organizations like that invite families to sign a sort of agreement, like a sort of commitment not to give their kids a smartphone until they're 16. And when you reach and I think it should actually be 18, but anyway, if it's 16, it's already something positive. And when you reach a critical mass, a proportion of kids in a class or in any sort of group of about 25 to 30%, then that pressure, that social pressure to have a smartphone actually decreases. And I'll just say one last thing. A lot of parents say, well, I don't want them to feel alone, to feel lonely, to feel isolated. I mean, let's start by having a sort of empirical look at what's going on. The rates of loneliness are massive. Like we've never witnessed something such as what we're facing now. People, since you guys are in the US, I remember, and this is not only minors, by the way, but like young people, for example, I think it's 61% of young American men feel that nobody really knows them well. And if you look at how much time kids spend with friends, this has decreased massively in the past 15 years. They actually experience loneliness, as in, like, it's not just that socialization has evolved, as some people argue, and sort of, now happens through digital means. No, people actually feel very bad about it. It's an unwanted loneliness. So, let's try to collectively really find formulas such as the ones I just summarized, to actually try to collectively delay this sort of like digital open bar, and for us also as parents, as reference, as adults, as teachers, as just citizens, also set the right example. That's why Off February is actually more directed to adults than kids.
I love that. Thank you so much for being on today to talk about it. If you're not following, definitely go on to follow off_movement for more information and more challenges, and follow Stop 5G Near Me for more practical information on how to mitigate exposure in your home, and also be able to give your tips and tools and tricks to be present in the moment, to be with the people that they're in, and find support, because we know it's so hard, like you said, with the social pressure to be the parent that says no. But when we come together in community and we have support, things get much easier. So I so appreciate all the work that you're doing, and we will definitely stay in contact. Thank you for coming on, for adding Instagram to this live. I appreciate it.
I'll delete the app straight afterwards, but thank you.
Same, actually. I think that this has inspired me with Lent starting, trying to figure out what to give up. So you might have just given me a really good idea.
Thank you so much. And people who started Off February today can just do that for 28 days from now.
Yeah, there's no time like the present. I agree.
Actually, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye.